Good morning. It's a rather wet and rainy day here in Cape Town, and I thought it would be perfect to prepare a batch of bread dough and create afterwards and some soup. So what I have in my bowl is some flour, salt and instant yeast. As you know with me, there are no particular measurements for the flour, but I can tell you I've got roughly 5 cups of flour, and it's all rough. A teaspoon of salt, a good teaspoon of salt, and 2 teaspoons of instant yeast. And to this I'm going to add enough water to produce a wetter dough as opposed to a drier dough, because that is how I prefer to make bread dough. So I've got some beautiful hand warm water here, and I'm going to put in about half of that. And to enrich it, some olive oil. It adds to the texture, it adds to the flavor. One hand into the bowl. Making bread is so good for the soul. Making bread by hand. It's different when you do it in a bread machine. So as you can see, the mixture is dry. So I'm going to add more warm water to get it to the consistency that I want. So I cannot give you a measurement for water. You know, making bread dough is all about the weather as well. The humidity in the air, how dry it is on a particular day. So you have to play and you have to create. And just by adding that extra water, this is what I've come up with. A ball of dough. And I'm happy with that sticky consistency because I'm going to be kneading it on a lightly floured surface. So there will be extra flour that is going to be incorporated into the dough. But that didn't take me long, did it? Now, this is why I only use one hand in a dough, so that I have another hand free to help me undough this hand. Some flour, and then you just pull to get it all off. Really, clean your hand. It just makes things far easier when you start kneading, because if your hand is sticky, it just ends up a big sticky mess for longer. But this is how I like to do it. You all have to find your own way of doing it. But see, there we go. Not bad. And now I sprinkle flour onto my surface and turn out this beautiful, beautiful dough. And I want to get everything out of my bowl. So I just sprinkle some extra flour in and rub my bowl. And I'm going to end up with a clean bowl because that is my aim. I want to use this bowl to put my beautifully kneaded dough into rise, and I don't want sticky bits. No special tools needed. Your hands are brilliant tools, and that is my bowl that I'm happy with. Put that to one side and let's start kneading. And in the beginning, it can be quite sticky. So you can either add extra flour, but not too much, because if you add too much, it is going to alter your dough. And you don't want that. You want a beautiful, pliable dough. I just gather everything around me. I like to sometimes, if it gets too sticky, I like to add a bit of olive oil to help me along with the kneading. It adds flavor and it helps with the stickiness. And you cannot be without a bench scraper. It is the best tool ever in the kitchen. Bit of olive oil. Why do we need the dough? We need the dough to develop the gluten in it. The gluten allows it all to rise and to stretch. And we need to develop that gluten. Add a little bit of extra flour, and because my dough is quite soft. But this is what it's all about. The more you make bread, the more you'll learn about stickiness and olive oil and flour. See, it's quite sticky. So I'm going to add a little bit more flour. And you've got to knead this dough for about 10 minutes. Now I know this can be done in machines, but do you know how good kneading is for you? First of all, you get a workout. And secondly, for your soul. My soul goes into this bread dough. And for me, that's very important. And there are different ways of kneading. This is how I knead. My grandmother used to knead like this. Some stretch and pull and fold over. Find your kneading mode and do it. Just do it. Now today, because it's quite cold, not cold, but it's cooler than it has been, the dough is going to take a bit longer to rise. And that's okay, because the longer it rises, the better the flavor. Often sourdoughs and things like that are made 2 days in advance. Give it a beautiful slow rise in a fridge, which is a lot cooler than this. See, I'm almost out of breath. That's bad. So I've made quite a nice amount of dough here, and I'm probably going to turn it into 2 creations. I have some beautiful nasturtium pesto that I made the other day, and I think I'd like to incorporate that into one of the halves. And then the other one I'll think about. Maybe I'll just leave it plain. Just depends. So for me, this is almost there. And I'm just going to add a little bit more oil. And remember, olive oil is flavor. You can't go wrong. Personally, I wouldn't do it with any of the other oils, because olive oil is my oil of choice. I cook with it, I drink it sometimes, I play with it. It's just, the smell is just magical if you have a good olive oil. Very important. So yeah, I added a bit too much olive oil, and I'll have to knead a bit longer to get it fully incorporated. See how it's all like that? That's not what I want. I want a beautiful, smooth ball of dough. So, just a little bit more exercise. And it's all coming together. Look at that. It's beautiful. Back into my bowl with olive oil. My dough in, more olive oil on top, and I will cover this with some plastic wrap, only because it keeps the heat in nicely. And I'll put it over at my stove top, so whatever else I'm cooking over there, there's a little bit of extra heat. That'll help it along. But if you don't have the extra heat to help it along, that's fine. It'll just do a slower rise. And that's it. Beautiful, beautiful bread dough. Going to do its magic. Just look at my bread dough. I put it next to the pot of lentil soup, and this is what happened. So I like to treat this dough very gently. It's alive. And I'm going to turn it out onto my floured surface and just look at it. And I'm going to divide this into roughly half. I'm going to put one to one side, and the other one is the piece I'm going to work with first. Now, my baking tins are very old. They're so old that they have a reference number, and each of them have a different reference number. This is number 399. That tells you how old it is. It's a beautiful German tin. Because it's so old, I don't take any chances. I give it a liberal spreading of olive oil. It's very well used. It's from my grandmother. And maybe even my great-grandmother. I'm not sure, but there's nobody around to ask anymore. So, a beautiful spreading of olive oil. And I like to do the rim as well, because sometimes the bread rises and goes over and then it sticks and it becomes a problem. And I also like to just place some baking paper down, just as a precautionary measure, like that. So that is my tin prepared. This dough I am going to fill with my beautiful nasturtium pesto that I made the other day. Let's just move that out the way so we can see what's going on here. So I'm going to just flatten it, and I'm just using my hands into roughly a rectangle, roughly the size of my tin. And this is my beautiful nasturtium pesto, which I'm going to spread and then roll up. So when you cut it, you've got those beautiful swirls. And this is a little bit peppery, a little bit garlicky, and it's going to go so well with my lentil soup. The temperature's dropped, so definitely a bit of soup and bread day. Let's just put a little bit more. And now I fold the sides in. And I'm going to roll up. Just like that. And the dough is so beautiful, light and airy. It's just magical to work with. There we go. And that seam goes onto the bottom of my tin. There we go. So it was a bit longer than my tin, so I've had to squish it up and made it fit. And it's fit. And that is going to have a second rising. And my other piece of dough, I decided I was going to make some cheese rolls. And I'm going to make them in another old tin. And again, this one doesn't have a code on it. But again, a good spreading of olive oil. And on the sides, because I'm going to make buns and I'm going to pack them in this tin and top them with a beautiful combination of cheddar and smoked cheese. So that's just a topping. And these are going to be pull-apart buns, which are really, really nice. Again, also goes very well with the soup. So that's beautifully oiled. And now I'm going to create my little buns. There we go. And because I do like the seams at the bottom, there we go. A smooth top with a seam at the bottom. Let's see how this all pans out. I think normally I would start from the center, but I haven't kind of counted out how many balls I'm going to have, so I'm going to start from the outside. so that when they rise, if it's not filled with dough, there's space for them to rise into. And this dough is really, really beautiful. Let's see what happens here. Oh, I might be lucky. It might all turn out very well. So one bread dough, two ways, and they're both delicious. Look at that. A drizzle of olive oil. And now a sprinkling of my cheese mix. And the cheese is the stuff that's going to stick to the tin. I promise you. But I'm going to be liberal and use all of this beautiful flavoursome cheese. Like that. And that is also ready for rising, topped with beautiful smoked cheese and cheddar cheese. And I'm going to give it a while to rise, and then it'll bake, and then it'll be ready. So stay tuned. Look how beautifully this has risen. And all I'm going to do is give it a beautiful brushing of some egg wash, which is there, and it's going into the oven. And it is going to grow even more. It is just beautiful. And here are the two beautiful different breads. This is the cheese pull-apart bread. So let's pull off a bun. Here we go. Look at that. It is beautiful, it is airy, it is light, and it is hot. And that is going to be beautiful with just some butter right now. And over here is our nasturtium pesto loaf. Let's cut it open and have a look. There we go, a beautiful swirl of nasturtium pesto. It's just gorgeous.